Now, we're live.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are starting a new month, kind of a birthday month. But I figured I'd hand this off over to Forrest to tell us what movie we have in store for you tonight.
Thank you, Dave. Tonight we are discussing 1987's Predator, directed by John McTiernan, written by Jim and John Thomas, and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, Bill Duke, Sonny Landham, Shane Black, R.G. Armstrong, and Kevin Peter Hall in the title role of the Predator.
It's Predator. Everybody knows.
It's Predator. Yeah, everybody knows it. Basic plot is a team of commandos go on a mission in Central America and find themselves hunted by an alien hunter. So I'm going to go around clockwise from my right.
I remember in Roger Ebert's review of Predator, he said it begins like Rambo and ends like aliens.
And that's like at least
it's a pretty good synopsis.
It was like that counts for originality in Hollywood. I think my feelings on that movie are best summarized by his review on that.
It's actually based on a true story. Little known fact.
I believe it's an interpretation of the most dangerous game. Let's start off with thoughts or first thoughts. Dustin, what's your first impressions? Dustin, is this your first time watching Predator?
I saw this when I was so young when I first saw this. I actually don't remember when it was. I got to see Alien and Predator at a very young age. I saw Alien when I was like 3 years old, and Predator very shortly after that. So I'm not sure when I first saw this, but I remember really enjoying it. Like, I didn't love the Predator as much as I love the Alien, but it really stands out like as a great movie, and it's one of like I think the staple movies that everybody should see at some point in their life, just because it has so much like cultural influence. Like, it's kind of the basis for a lot of things in its genre that would appear later, at least in terms of like action movies and sci-fi. So very influential, and I had a great time with it when I first saw it, even though I maybe didn't fully understand what was going on, because again, I was kind of little.
Okay.
But it's something you can always enjoy rewatching.
Absolutely. Dane, is this your first time watching Predator?
No, it is not. I watched this movie for the first time on TV when I was like maybe 12-ish, something like that. Maybe a little bit older. I can't remember.
I was definitely younger than that.
Yeah, but it was on TV. But this was I watched it just now, fully uncut and everything. But I enjoy it as much now as I did then. I mean, it's just a really, really solid action film that just happens to have an alien in it, and I mean a good mark of any kind of science fiction action, any kind of science fiction, fantasy, horror, or superhero movie. A good judge of whether it's good or not is, even if there were no supernatural or anything out of the ordinary, any of those elements that happen in it, would you still want to watch it? And the first third is definitely really, really strong in the fact that even if the alien never showed up, it would still be a good movie, because the Schwarzenegger 80s action movie stuff is really on point. And then, of course, once the alien does show up, then it gets kicked into high gear, even more than it already was. But yeah, I mean, it's really solid on every level. And the most dangerous game thing, I definitely did get those vibes the second time. which again, it's a very basic story, but I think it's executed very well, and especially the third act is my favorite because it's so primal.
Like man on monster action.
Yeah.
That and even more than that, it's hunter versus hunter, and it's a good combination of highly advanced and tactical while also being very caveman like at the same time.
Very primitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mo, is this your first time watching Predator?
Oh no, seen this countless times. Much like Bane, I definitely saw it after, Dustin. I definitely saw it as a real young kid after Alien. I don't know how long between. I saw Alien when I was like 6, so I might have been like 7 or 8 by the time I got around to Predator. Loved it. Definitely would agree with him. I prefer the Xenomorphs, but Predators kick ass. And then once I discovered all the comics that both of them had through Dark Horse, that led to a lot of good years of awesome fun. And yeah, Dane, you summed it up pretty good. It's one of those, like, it's one of the best no bullshit action movies. Even if they were just fighting like whatever that dude's name is.
It never stops.
Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those movies, like, because it's so no nonsense and gets right to the shit, and it pretty much keeps going the entire time. You can just watch it on mute with like thrash metal over it, and it's just as kick ass, So it's definitely one of those movies I've thrown on just to have in the background a lot over the years, because it's just nice to look over there and see that awesome action. That buff hunky boy all smeared in mud doesn't hurt either, Adds a little special element to the end there. I think that's I don't know. It's in the creature design, I think, is pretty phenomenal. It's hard to deny. Mouth.
Especially after they redid it. Because the original creature design, I don't think this movie would be as beloved if they had stuck with that.
Yeah, it was kind of like a Xenomorph knockoff, actually. And Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally playing the Predator, which I think.
Hey, but it could have been up there doing splits in the trees and shit. That would have been pretty awesome.
Yeah. Okay, Roger, over to you, Roger. Is this your first time watching Predator?
Well, the good news is no, it's not my first time. I remember seeing it on rental, number of years and years ago. I can't really nail down when I first saw it, but I was in the military at the time, and I just saw the front cover. I thought it looked kind of cool. It had Arnie Schwarzenegger on it. It had a really cool look to it. Look at the back. Yeah, it's rated R. Let's take it home. So it had a lot of fun. And of course, this years later, I watched it again. So this is a movie I really do like. It's one of the 3 Schwarzenegger movies I really like: the Predator, Conan, and the first Terminator. So any one of those 3 I could watch again and again.
Indeed.
Not a bad top 3 for Schwarzenegger at all.
Not at all.
No.
Shoot, he did a good job. I liked it. I had hands down. I like it.
It's definitely.
I'm sure watching it in the military was hype as hell too. Do you ever try to recreate that scene where he breaks the razor on his cheek?
No, I didn't try to do that or try to disembowel myself or stuff like that. So,
my brother would always
how relatable do you find this? Find these characters?
Yeah, was it accurate to your experience in the military?
Yes.
Me? No, I don't think anybody would if I enjoy doing dry razoring like that, or just try to injure themselves that way. But I'm an electrical razor guy myself, anyways.
My brother did it once with like those toy razors that you get on Christmas. I thought it was fucking hilarious.
All right, over to you, Dave. It's your first time watching Predator.
No, it's not my first time, but I'm coming at this film a little bit differently than all of you guys. I actually saw Predator 2 before I saw Predator 1. I saw Predator 2 on Laserdisc. I saw Predator 2 on Laserdisc years ago, and it was phenomenal on Laserdisc. And I just never got around to watching the first one up until like when I actually got a copy of it, like maybe 10 years back, and then I didn't. I watched it again in a marathon with my fiance, and then again here. So I didn't see it as many times as you guys, but I do enjoy aspects of it that lead into the other, rest of the franchise. And Arnie, well, he's big, muscled, and sexy as a beast.
Indeed.
Especially in Tarzan Greystone Mud.
This is him in his prime too. So this is
this is like
best work. Period.
Yeah, this is like shortly after like Commando. So to me,
banger.
Character, isn't it?
And the thing that I like about
Basically.
this one better than like the later Predators is because these guys were like commandos. They weren't Navy SEAL. They weren't boring military dudes. They were, badass secret ops dudes that were sent in on a covert mission, not realizing that there were people there before them. So
They had the personality.
well, yeah, and
Right.
I like the fact that each of them seem to have their own quirks. And to me, that's what makes a army movie. To instead of have a platoon of just straight up military dicks, you have people who are like good in whatever they do, and they definitely have a story behind them instead of just straight up cadets.
When-
Yeah,
for
it's
his-
like that
for-
ragtag group of mercenaries thing, so they all have a little more personality.
And
Like,
for
like,
historical,
of the Expendables.
and for historical context, we were doing a lot of those kinds of operations in Central and South America during Reagan's time in office. So
Oh,
it makes
yeah.
sense why they
Well,
would be there.
And you're right, Dane. It does get a little bit more primal in the third act. So I think I enjoy that aspect of the film. So.
When you notice that
It
the
also
whole
boasts one of the most manly handshakes in film history. Can't forget
Yeah.
that.
That's the,
Yeah.
that's the best part of the movie right there.
Yep.
I
They made
Yeah,
a
they
meme.
came to
They made a
names.
meme out of it.
Oh, I know, but
Yeah,
You
that
did
sexual
bring up
tyrannosaur line.
You did bring up something I want to quick comment on, Dave. I'm not sure if I saw these movies so young. I may have also seen Predator 2 first as well. It's kind of fuzzy in my mind, so I didn't. I had kind of forgotten it until you mentioned it. It's like, did I see that first? I'm not sure.
The thing is, I'd seen so much of the clips of the first one. I felt like I didn't really need to see the first one up until I actually saw it. But I do appreciate the special effects and everything, which we'll get into later on and whatnot. But if we didn't have Predator, we wouldn't have the cool ass Narsicans in the Star Trek Next Generation series. So,
Well, my dad would buy me movies from video stores, and he bought me Predator 2 when I was pretty young. So that's why I think maybe I saw it first, but it's difficult to tell.
Over to you, Brandon. Is this your first time watching Predator?
No, though oddly enough, I have yet to ever see Commando. It's kind of funny in that way.
Oh, dude.
But it is one.
Top 5 Schwarzenegger right there.
What's funny
Yeah,
is
put a
because
beer
I
in
was
you and
watching-
watch it.
I was watching Predator with my wife last night, and I was telling her that, and she's like, "How can you own it and have had your father grow up as an Arnold fan and yet never have seen Commando?" And I'm like, "I don't know," but I saw Predator from a young age because my father was an Arnold fan. Matter of fact, when I came back from a recent trip where I was picking up some of his effects, he had an Arnold poster book that was there,
Nice.
along with a Steve Reeves, or Steve Hercules Reeves, I could say, poster book as well. So it's kind of cool there. But
Uh-oh.
so that wasn't my cup. But I remember watching this as a young child. My father was, like I said, very much into it. And though I was usually frightened of most horror films as a child, this one was an exception to that rule. I thought it was really neat. I really enjoyed it. Probably one of the few that I did that wasn't afraid of as a child.
Yeah.
This is more of an action movie than it is a horror movie. I
But
think.
that's what I was going to say. Is it felt more
Definitely.
like an action than a true horror, and I think that helped. Like Alien, I couldn't do as a child, but Predator, oh yeah, I could easily have done. I mean, I easily did Predator as a child, and it was not even that scary for me. So it was kind of cool to see it again. Watching it on the Blu-ray on the 4K TV I have, I realized that yes, they can clean it up, and yes, it does look incredible in 4K. So
This has a history of bad Blu-ray releases, so is the 4K actually good then?
I don't know, but the Blu-ray release that I have that had the 3 of them on there was a very top-notch cleanup job. At least on that TV.
Yeah, I've got the 4 movie set. I think it's the 4K.
But maybe it's just the upres that the player does. Because I did play it on a PlayStation Pro at the time, so it's possible that way too. Because they will upgrade it. So well,
Yeah,
it's hard to say.
the 4K restoration that I saw looked pretty good. I mean, it had some grain, but it wasn't, too bad. And there's a certain threshold of acceptability with grain that you need to accept, just because film just as a medium, it's going to be grainy because it is organic as opposed to digital. So, but it seemed like it was an acceptable threshold of grain.
Indeed. But yeah, good film. Very much a part of my growing up as a child. Classic action sci-fi film. I would say well worth watching, even if you're not all that into horror movies. If you like a good action film, this will be good for you.
Okay, and over to you, Jake. Is this your first time watching Predator?
I'm going to be the odd man out here and say that yes, this was my first time watching this film. I cannot swear that I never saw bits of it on TV when I was younger. I probably did. But I don't believe that anyone in my family really had any interest in watching this. And I can't recall seeing it at a friend's house. This is the first time that I know that I sat down to watch it. And I'm sorry to say that I was too tired at the time to get, kind of like Mo's experience, I think last week. I was a little too tired at the time to really get the full experience. But I didn't have another shot to go back this week, unfortunately. I'm hoping, I have the 3 movies set, and my brother's actually interested in watching them, so I'm hoping we can find time to just kind of knock the 3 movies out. So I'll revisit it then. But my first exposure, well, see, this is one of those movies where it was definitely not my first exposure. I've been exposed to Predator many times over the years because it's such a big part of pop culture, and so Dustin's reaction is understandable. It is one that I knew a lot about the film, and quite frankly, as slight as the story is, I kind of probably didn't. I probably was halfway there already in terms of appreciating the movie. But still, it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it. It is very much an action film. I'm not sure why Brandon's hung up on horror. I just saw this as straight up action. And, well, sci-fi action, I guess you could say, because of the alien aspect. And it was fun. It's fun seeing Arnold do his 80s Broforce sort of thing, And, I was a little put off by Jesse Ventura's character. And it was interesting seeing
stuff.
Shane
It was a
Black.
different time.
Oh,
Yeah.
like is Crocodile
Yeah.
Dundee?
Yeah.
I love it.
I mean,
Hunter-like?
the movie, the movie was straight up big dudes and big guns action porn.
Macho.
I mean, that's really what just totally. That's like I said, it reminded me so much of that Broforce game. It's like, and
it really sets you up for the flavor
Hat-
of Jesse Ventura
Hat-
on the helicopter with
Wha-
his big old dips of chaw.
right. What were you saying, Dave?
Half Expendables, half Alpha Dogs.
I read something just now though while we were getting ready for this that is kind of weird when you think about it. Arnold has a recurring, essentially glorified cameo in the Expendables movies. No one else in the cast has been in those movies. That's just weird. But anyway, so good movie. I'm glad I finally saw it, and I do look forward to eventually getting the others knocked out.
I do love that we have the future governor of California and the future governor of Minnesota in this movie.
And,
Right.
And also Sonny Landham, who played Billy,
Right.
he ran for governor of Kentucky.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So this
didn't
really is like a gubernatorial proving ground.
and didn't didn't he and Ventura both run or nearly run for Senate at the same time, and they ended up not getting anywhere.
I
So
don't
you-
remember that.
So you definitely have a little bit of a nice political bent there, and this is actually the second one we've done with Schwarzenegger and Ventura, so that was kind of.
Are we
Yeah.
trying to say that politicians are predators?
No, there are a bunch of.
I think it's more accurate to say
The Predators, they looks a lot better than the politicians.
It's more to say they're muscle bound macho men who like going out and shooting things.
I would have said that the world of politics is pretty tough and cutthroat. In order to survive it, you have to be as tough as those guys going up against the Predators. So I mean, you could definitely. I'm sure you could, if you wanted, you could probably dive into some of the Reagan era politics and stuff of this thing because of like I mentioned, we were doing a lot of interventionist operations in Central and South America during that time that were not as heavily publicized as the Cold War stuff, even though it was covered, but it wasn't the main focus. I think I just found that funny. That's like, hey, look at that, 2 future governors in this thing,
Right.
and plus, you've got. I think it is definitely indicative of its time, like you mentioned, in a lot of ways. I'd say mostly either good or harmless, but yeah, there's definitely some obvious 80s bro culture going on, which is fairly obvious for the time. But at the same time, what's nice about that is that the first third of this thing, it's definitely your classic Schwarzenegger action movie full of all the one-liners you'd want, all the the manliest the body count, the manliest handshake of all time, all that stuff that just makes you laugh.
All guns blazing.
Well, but then the thing is, as capable as those guys are, even they are not strong enough against the Predator. And it's only really after the Predator realizes that Arnold just won't quit that the Predator decides to give him more or less a fair fight, because he doesn't conceal himself. He doesn't use his shoulder laser thing, all that stuff. And it's like, at that point, I guess the Predator realizes. Go ahead.
As the leader of the group, Arnold is the most worthy of the honor kill kind of thing.
Right.
Well, at that point,
I am going to prove myself by defeating you without any of my weapons.
Yeah. Well, and at that point, the Predator realizes that he's actually a worthy adversary, and I suspect that that's probably what he's really looking for. more than anything. Is he's probably secretly wanting a worthy adversary, and but you also get the sense that the predator is, because he's from a more advanced species, you also get the sense that he's sort of fallen into the, shall we call it, the hunter's malaise, where he's just concealing himself, he's just using his shoulder laser, and it's like it's not even a challenge anymore, kind of like shooting animals from a jeep or something. It's like you're not actually getting down there, and it's not really a fair fight. So you could probably say that's, yeah, it's like you could probably read that as a commentary on hunting itself. How is it really fair, or is it really worthy if there's not a sufficient risk of death for you?
Yeah.
And we kind of, in later Predator movies, we kind of see some more what happens when there are like fair battles, like in Alien versus Predator, where one alien kills two predators. Granted, that was a special alien that would have probably become like a Praetorian if it had been allowed to survive. But
I think this is the first movie we actually saw a minigun. You know, the mini Gatling gun thing. I said that thing was
the heck
cool.
out of the jungle.
That very well might have been the first time we really saw a minigun. That was the first time I saw a minigun in action in a movie, for sure.
Same here.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be totally misremembering this, but wasn't that same minigun used in Terminator 2, or was it just that it was introduced in Predator and then they were like, oh, that was a cool thing to do, let's have Arnold do that? I can't remember if it was the same
They
one.
did use it in Terminator 2, which came after this.
Yeah.
So, are you talking about the one that the Blaine Ventura has?
Yeah. Was that the same one, or am I misremembering that?
Well, I did read that he was like the first one to use one of those, and that they later had Schwarzenegger. I don't know if it was the same gun, but it was like the same type or model or some such
similar.
Thing. Yeah.
Well,
Arnie definitely used it to better effect, though. Didn't just chop down a bunch of trees with it.
I did. I have to say, so the manliest handshake part, that's absolutely hilarious, but it's kind of meant to be. It's like it's meant to be. It's like so masculine that it's like anymore, and it's like I'm just gonna drown in the testosterone, and it's like it's really, really, really funny.
Yeah,
I love it. But then the other, maybe less intentionally funny part is the fact that like when they do the big just shooting everything they've got into the jungle and they don't hit anything, and it's just like,
and they just like level, they just like make a clearing. Like I loved that scene when I was little.
But it's just funny because it's like I have never seen in an action movie where they just unload on nothing with such intensity for so long, and it's like you realize that in real life, even if you were, even if you saw the adversary right in front of you, you would not waste that much ammunition. You just wouldn't, because like the whole point of any kind of combat is shoot as few bullets as possible to conserve, But here they're just literally wasting their clips of ammo and they don't hit anything. I mean,
it's just supposed to be.
It's a great
situation. In this case, though, we have a visible alien hitting people, and they're being hoisted in the trees and terrible to some bowlings, and I guess they simply just had to get rid of it. Let's get rid of it. Let's do it.
Well, this was also a movie that was one of the first of its kind to, at least in mainstream cinema, to use the point of view from the monsters.
The infrared.
Infrared.
Right.
And I remember a lot of people when they were talking about this film and seeing it for the first time, seeing the body heat. And you'll see it later in Tremors. You'll see it later in in other movies. But this is one of the
Alien
movies that
3.
Yeah,
I actually do. I think I do remember that, even though I was a kid at the time this movie first came out. I think I do remember that being a big deal, like people making a fuss about it. And it is one of the things I always kind of associated with the movie was like the predator vision. Yeah.
And I do
Very
really love
memorable thing. Yeah.
I do really love that. I do really love the fact that the Predator's infrared mask.
Mhm.
I like the fact that it's a wash in blue, and then that makes everyone's body heat stand out all the more. Then
Mhm.
when the Predator takes his mask off, then everything is flush with red, and it's like
Yep.
just such a great contrast.
Mhm.
It's a good subtle thing.
Like it sees an infrared naturally.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I guess it's a little bit like, how we don't really think about it too much, but it's like we wear sunglasses, we wear night vision goggles, and all those things are meant to do certain things. But then
Night vision.
we forget about, how we see the world naturally.
So you think that the Predator's mask, Dane, is like a focusing device? It's like
Yeah,
a cut.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I thought about that way.
well, he's got all kinds of things that enhance his senses because
Mhm.
he can see in a way that he can't normally. He can hear.
It has different vision modes. It's
yeah.
also called a biomask, like in the
Yeah.
lore.
Yeah, he's wearing a suit that's cloaked like a Klingon, and he just goes around and uses his body heat the body heat signatures.
Well, and
He even has a big bang too.
Yeah, I've learned, because Alien and Predator are kind of so intertwined at this point. Like I've learned a lot about like Predator lore because of Alien lore.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so there are a lot of like the biomask is like an active piece of technology with like a lot of different vision modes and other things to like assist in hunting. Like there's a vision mode that like highlights the aliens, for example, because they don't appear on infrared. Like,
did you, Dustin? Did you ever play the Alien vs Predator PC game growing up?
I did not get a chance.
Was it
I
from
did not
Rebellion?
I did not get a chance to play the PC game, but I did get to play a lot of the 2010 Xbox game.
All right, yeah, because I remember the PC game. They had you. That was the first time I had ever been introduced to the whole concept of like of having different visions for different
Modes.
species.
Or
Exactly.
the Atari Jaguar game.
Yeah.
I also
Hell
played the
yeah.
Alien versus Predator like Super NES games, and I
I
had the
have
Alien
that.
I had the Alien versus Predator comics that came out in the 90s when they first did the crossover as well.
Yep, got
Oh,
those on
which-
trade
Those are
paperback.
dope.
I like the Batman versus
Great.
Predator. That first crossover.
Yes, that was a great
awesome.
crossover.
All three of those were
Solid
pretty good,
one.
actually.
One,
There's a
I do
Predator
find-
versus Tarzan crossover that's pretty dope too.
And then there's also like Alien versus Predator versus Terminator.
I do find it kind of funny that
Oh, actually, Archie versus Predator. I'm
I
sorry.
do find it funny that the Alien versus Predator movies are technically comic book movies. I say very technically because those comics were already based on pre-existing movie properties, so it's a little cheating to say that. But I find that kind of amusing because usually people don't think about that.
What's
But
fun
that-
is in the Alien vs Predator trade paperback I have, there's a long section talking about like the origins of Alien vs Predator, and it's like, what can we do for like an upcoming project? And somebody was like, how about Alien versus Predator? And they like called whoever they had to clear it with, and they were like Godzilla versus King Kong? Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
And like everybody was completely on board from the beginning.
because they were both owned by Fox. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they were to try to make RoboCop versus the Terminator into a movie, not just the video game, but if they were to do that now, it's like the right situation for the Terminator have been in such a state of flux as far as like who has owned what over the years, and because MGM still has the rights to the first movie, but then
and they also own RoboCop. So
so it's like, but just the first movie, not so much the series as a whole anymore. So it's like if you were to try to make that, I'm sure that'd be a lot more red tape. And would it even be good? Probably not. But still, it's like
Probably
that.
not.
I do kind of wish that we could have seen that on the big screen in the same way that we did with Alien versus Predator. But
Yeah,
the
especially
ulti-
with Schwarzenegger and Peter Weller in their primes.
yeah, I know. But then the ultimate would have been if you'd have had Alien versus Predator versus RoboCop versus Terminator.
Shut up and take my money.
What would have been awesome is you could have had RoboCop try to shoot Terminator in the dick, and it just doesn't work. That would have been pretty good.
Although,
And then you throw Freddy and Jason in there, and then you've got it all.
although now that Alien, Predator, and Marvel are all owned by the Mouse, and Marvel has published Alien and Predator comics, they can do Alien versus Predator versus the Punisher versus Wolverine.
Ooh,
And I would pick that shit up right up and read it.
that would be badass.
Well, the first Alien thing to come out while Disney has owned it has been Aliens Fireteam Elite, which I've been playing, and it's a pretty quality product. So
Sounds fun.
I'm more optimistic about Disney's ownership of Alien and Predator than I was initially.
Marvel's Alien comics are pretty good. So they haven't done.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But their Alien comics are really good.
And I know this is a Predator episode, and sorry to be talking about Alien so much, but they've become so related at this point.
Yeah. You can't really talk about one without the other at this point.
Right.
But anyway, back to Predator.
Back to Predator.
Yeah, I should probably get into my first impressions.
Yeah.
So I was about maybe 9 years old when I saw this on television. And I would say it's probably because I was at that age where the Kenner action figures were pretty much available in every toy store. And, I collected those. So that's what got, so much like Aliens, that's what got me into the core.
That's why they let me rent Alien at 3, because they thought it was for kids because they were toys.
Yeah, during that weird time in American history where hard R super violent movies had toys aimed at kids.
For
The very
kids.
last one to do that was Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers had a fuck ton of toys.
Toys
It's such a rad movie.
Actually, I think Blade.
I love that.
Was one of the
Oh, the awesome film, though. I loved it.
Well, and then
We got to do that one day.
Then it makes the whole Batman Returns McDonald's controversy. Makes it even more ridiculous when you think about, oh, gee, there were Aliens toys, there were, all these toys.
And the funny thing is that
Anyway, back to Forrest's story though.
Yeah. Anyway, that was funny. Since those Alien Predator figures came out just shortly after Batman Returns. But anyway, it was the toys that kind of first got me into it. And then I saw the movie on TV, and immediately became a huge fan. And also because this was also around the same time as that I was also obsessed with Batman as a kid, and I saw Batman, and my aunt's boyfriend at the time had the entire Batman versus Predator run on trade paperback. So I remember reading that and him letting me borrow that, and so I was just immediately hooked. Favorite, like as Dustin mentioned, with Ebert's review, I liked how it starts. It starts out like it's your typical macho '80s action flick, and but it ends with almost but it ends more like a horror movie, more like a horror movie.
And there were no survivors.
But also cross just a little bit with Schwarzenegger's earlier movie Conan the Barbarian a little bit, because of just the very primal shirtless guy versus a bigger monster.
Technology.
Another fine piece of cinematography, if I would say so.
But yeah, for me, it's favorite Schwarzenegger movie. One of my top 10 movies of all time, as well as as well as my favorite movie from the year I was born, because since this came out in '87 and I was born in '87.
So this is an apt one for a birthday month.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed how there are certain movies that came out during your birth year that you're like, yeah, this kind of sums me up in a weird way?
And this was it.
Yeah, Silence of the Lambs is that for me, because that was my birth year.
I don't know if I could do Alien as a sum up for me.
Yeah. I like to think Raiders is one for me, but But anyway,
My year is weird. It's like I think it's like
Mhm.
Dream Warriors and Hellraiser.
Wait, what year were you born, Dustin?
87 as well.
Okay.
oh,
So actually, in that case, you had perfect timing. But yeah, and although I will admit though that as much as I love it though, I will admit though that there is one aspect of it that I found didn't hold up, and that's when they're on the helicopter in the helicopter, and Ventura says
Some of their locker talk is kind of today.
homophobic.
Well,
Yeah.
Fuck that. I think that's amazing. I love that part of the movie. It's
Well,
hilariously
you
bad.
gotta.
It's
I
terrible.
Ventura does have that one line that
Yeah.
this stuff will make you a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus.
Well, I mean,
That's what most
thing,
people
though,
focus on from that scene.
Well, I
rather
mean,
than
You gotta watch it. Always
here's-
watch a movie based on its time. That's
Exactly.
how
Right.
you
But,
always see
but
it.
what here's the really really important thing about that scene is just how much of character we get to learn from
Mhm.
each one of them.
Mhm.
Very quickly, we learn something about each person, and some of which is not so nice, as we know from Jesse Ventura.
Mhm.
I would argue that it's not necessarily supposed to be a good character trait. It's definitely a character
No.
trait of its time,
Not
for
at all.
sure.
Mhm.
But I don't think it's necessarily presented, as being good or anything.
No,
Um,
we see that he's pretty much all bark and ultimately no bite.
yeah, exactly.
Well, and also it's my understanding that it was his job in the WWE,
In the fire team.
WWF, whatever,
To be a heel.
to be so he was basically a professional asshole at the time. So
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I do like the fact that he's one of the first to go, because
Mhm.
he does get to do a lot of badass things early on,
Mhm.
and you're like, oh, this is Jesse Ventura. He's got to last, for longer, but he doesn't. So I think that's a good bait and switch. But yeah, I would argue that that does kind of make you wince nowadays, but I don't think it's necessarily meant to be, nice per se, because he's not.
They're
really a
not
nice
supposed
character.
to be cozy dudes at
Yeah.
all. They're supposed to be like kind of scummy mercenaries that several of the dudes on the team, you wouldn't put it past them to just not care who they're blowing away out there.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
Right.
Billy's kind of a bit of a loose cannon. The other dude, like the razor blade guy, is just a total fucking psycho. I mean, none of them are really nice,
Yeah. Well, but then
And then you've also got we should do I don't think anyone's done a mention yet of Hawkins, who's played by Shane Black in his first appearance.
terrible.
One of
Who-
his rare acting roles.
He actually would come around to do the new Predator as director, but in between, he also directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, and The Nice Guys, which are three pretty solid films.
yeah, the
And
But
nice
he
guys
has-
are
he
good.
wrote, and the year this came out, he also wrote Lethal Weapon.
Which
Yeah.
is, from what I understand, how he got the role, because they wanted to keep him nearby in case they needed to do script rewrites.
Yeah,
Nice.
which that's a real concern, because
Right.
stuff inevitably changes on the fly. But
Right.
I really think, in terms of a piece of writing, I think that scene on the helicopter, it's not given as much praise as it should be, just because we know a lot about each person very quickly, and you have what's ostensibly a fun, almost like party vibe with Long Tall Sally by Little
Yes.
Richard. But it also, you can interpret it as kind of like a fun time, but it also is kind of a dark foreshadowing, in the sense that, they are going to have some fun tonight, but it's not exactly what they expect. And they are going to have some fun that is more of what they're used to, in the sense that they get to be, in an 80s action movie version of what combat is, which looks very fun, when in real life combat is anything but fun.
Right.
Like Black
but-
Ops mercenaries.
Yeah. So it's like you can interpret it a couple different ways, which I like. And again, it's like, it is a little bit of a, a quick writing trick as far as like
Mhm.
giving people certain characteristics that can tell you something about them quickly. But in this
Mhm.
kind of movie where you got to keep things moving, it's just,
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that's a sign of showing that you know how to tell people just enough to let them know who's who. Because what you don't want are people that just kind of fade into the background.
And the whole idea of it being like a black ops, like off the books kind of thing, is set up pretty economically. You got General Phillips, I believe, was R.G. Armstrong, who
Yes.
I don't know if anyone else felt this, but his eyes, I just was thinking Columbo the whole time. I don't know, but but I think Arnold says something about backup, and then I think it's like Phillips that says to him like backup. So, so just to the effect of you ain't getting him. You're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And that's
kind of like that line from the first Gears of War. Will we have air support? You are the support.
Right.
Well, and that again, talk about economics of the screenwriting. We know some key things about Arnold going into this, like in the first dialogue scene. We know that he's the best. We know that he cares about his guys. We know that he cares that they stay alive and that they keep coming back for missions, hence why they can be the best. But we also know that he's not just a hired hand, even though, I mean, he is in terms of his occupation, but he's also, wanting to be more than just an assassin. He wants to actually try to do some good with his skills and with what he knows how to do. So, that tells us a lot about him versus, and he's not like, a Spencer Tracy kind of compassionate character, but he's also smart enough to know that, the person who soldiers who stay alive, commandos who stay alive, they get to accumulate experience so that they can be the best and they can keep doing missions. So he knows how to question.
He's not like a bad guy, or anything.
Well, he knows how to question just enough versus say Carl Weathers, who's a total company man, you might say.
Right.
Oh yeah. Well,
And that's something else that's something else that's set up pretty economically, that clearly Dylan and Dutch have a long history, but it's like on the other hand, when they announced that Dylan's going to be on the team, Dutch is like, really? And so like, what? Yeah, like I'm sure there's a reason for that, but it's and yes, it was fun seeing Carl Weathers in that role, like you said, as the company man.
Yeah.
Like I said though, I've seen the first 3 seasons of Arrested Development 3 times, and he was the quote unquote acting coach whose acting advice was basically to find the best stew. I can't not think of that.
I buy all my cars at police auctions.
Yes, it was basically how to cut quarters as an actor.
Yeah, how to be as cheap as possible.
It was great, which probably would have been advice that would come in handy on a shoot like this.
Yeah, probably. But the manliest handshake in history, that it's more than just a meme or something to laugh at. It does set up the fact that these guys have conflicting philosophies. They have
kind of a rivalry too.
A friendly rivalry, because they clearly respect each other, but they do come at things from a different angle.
Off screen too. I guess they were like competing to see who could be most pumped when they were on camera, because they're both like bodybuilder dudes, right?
Yeah. So,
maybe throwing out a few push-ups off screen and then doing that handshake, like, yeah, look at the bump.
Yeah, they will do that in these kinds of movies. They will do some push-ups right before they call action, so that way they're just really pumped. But
that's like the point in the movie where you can feel the hair start growing on your chest. You know what I mean?
Well, but I do really find it funny when you look at like the bodybuilder types, kind of the alpha males, and then you look at like supermodels, like the alpha females, how similarly they behave to each other, just in different realms. because
I wonder if they compete like that. Like maybe they go puke off screen before they do it or something.
Not cool.
Not like that, but I mean like in terms of like the different levels of
Accurate.
competitiveness. That's more what I'm getting at. And they're both kind of appearance obsessed, but in a different way.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Actually, this time in cinema history was all about the testosterone because you didn't just have the Schwarzenegger stuff. You also had Stallone. You had all of the like major muscle heads going. Chuck Norris,
Charles Bronson.
And you talk about rivalry through the 80s and the 90s. It was Stallone versus Schwarzenegger, and well, that was the whole famous story about Stop or My Mom.
And and both of them had Carl Weathers at their side.
That's right. Yep. And that famous story about Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Schwarzenegger made it look like he was really interested in that script and then bowed out so that way Sylvester Stallone would take it. And he did that on purpose because he knew it was dog shit. And so he did that to make Stallone look bad.
That's pretty great.
So it was those are the kind of instincts you need if you're going to be governor.
And of course, those instincts served him so well when he decided to do family-friendly movies.
Indeed.
Well, I mean, I got to see one of the things I was really glad that I got to see when I was in California was getting to see the original Muscle Beach, which of course they moved it since Arnold was there, but you still have the original area, outdoor bodybuilding area, and you got to get that history because that's where he got his start. A lot of it. Doing his bodybuilding there. It's just kind of cool to see it. You can just see like you can just feel the testosterone left in the air.
You can probably smell
it. Towards
it's got a bit of a musk to it, you know.
Get a good whiff of that. You talk about puking on screen. That'll make you do it.
That'll make you puke on screen, man. I fucking wouldn't want to be in those locker rooms.
Which, of course, brings to mind that other 80s staple, Top Gun.
Oh, man.
That's masculine of a different flavor, you know what I mean? Still love it, though.
Something like that.
That's what this movie was missing, was some volleyball.
All the volleyball.
Well, we had Little Richard. I mean, that kind of checks off that checkbox in a different kind of way.
Yeah, but they were playing volleyball shirtless.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how he should have showed down with the Predator as like a 1v1 volleyball match on the beach. That'd be sick.
Predator Extreme Beach Volleyball.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Well, that sounds like a game that probably did exist somewhere in the early 90s. That...
Yeah, so instead of Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball with the bouncing boobs technology, you'd have to have bouncing pecs technology.
Actually, I should back up. I should have mentioned one of my exposures to this. Like I said, it's pervasive in pop culture, but this is very much a franchise that anyone familiar with the Mortal Kombat series would have some familiarity with, because they not only brought in Predator in several games, but they also basically modeled the Cyber Ninjas on the character. So it's like,
and you know what's
stole that spine rip for a fatality too. I think it's in.
Right.
I don't remember
what was actually. I didn't realize that.
It makes total sense.
That was Sub-Zero's fatality.
Well, and you can totally see what would later influence Mortal Kombat, not only in this but also like in Big Trouble in Little China. It's like if you kind of take those two kinds of worlds of fantasy and of like the East Asian variety versus like this, which has some science fiction and it's more Western in its orientation. You smush that all together, you got Mortal Kombat.
Right.
And didn't both the Alien and the Predator end up in one of the newer Mortal Kombats? Or am I mad?
Oh, yeah.
I thought so.
And both of them were also in Fortnite.
And the Terminator
Yeah.
was in one of the.
Everything's in
Mortal Kombat.
Fortnite.
Terminator was it. Terminator and Rambo were in Mortal Kombat 11.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically, it's just any of those '80s action schoolyard, battles
Right.
that you want to have. Yeah, they eventually made them happen.
Mm-hmm. So we're thinking the Predator could be the antagonist in Expendables 4, maybe.
Oh, that would be awesome. Except that if the Predator was the antagonist, he'd probably have to be in a wheelchair because they're all so old, But it'd have to be some kind of badass wheelchair,
Oh yeah, all Predator
Yes.
wheelchairs are badass.
Well, they have to be. They have really great Predator health insurance to cover it.
Anyway,
Speaking of, his mask is like clearly
back to the
pressurized
plot.
or something.
That's the plot.
Because when he pulls off the mask, like air hisses out of those tubes, and I was wondering what that's about. 'Cause he seems to be able to breathe fine, but then again, he
Yeah.
is always like clicking and wheezing, so maybe he has like a touch of the asthma, some sleep apnea, something like that.
Something like
Okay,
that.
the-
I kind of wondered about that too, because this time around, because like you said, he can breathe fine. I was thinking maybe it was just pressure sealed because presumably it's like if he were to be in an environment
yeah.
that had different gravity, or if he was in space or something like that, maybe it's designed for that purpose. I guess.
Right, and
Well,
plus
it's
it probably helps
obviously
hold it
filled
to his
with,
face,
Something like that.
It's like the
It's
Predator.
obviously
It's like
filled
the
with
Predator.
laughing gas.
It's like the Predator can
Yeah.
breathe in Earth's atmosphere, but maybe not all that well.
Yeah. Well, I doubt it would be.
Impression I got.
True, he always does look pissed off when he takes it off too. It's probably because he is having a bit of a hard
Yeah.
time.
It probably wouldn't be an ideal long-term solution.
Wouldn't you be pissed off too if you were that ugly?
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe.
You can't really. It's a little hard to get girls when your mouth looks a little vaginal.
Then of course,
Plenty
you got
hunky
the
boys
laugh,
running around
which,
this movie for him though.
I mean,
That's
I figured
true.
it was nitrous oxide that was in the Predator, the Predator thing, because he had that laugh at the end of it. Oh my!
Oh yeah.
maybe
that's awesome.
maybe it's the same gas that Bane has in his mask.
Oh, the Venom?
Venom?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nice. Well, it is bright green, so maybe.
yeah. And they're both. They're
Well,
both,
no, his blood's
Some
green.
extra
Sorry.
steroids to be extra in this movie.
Yeah, they're both roided up. So. Oh, no, okay. Now you talk about schoolyard fights: Predator versus Bane.
Yeah.
I mean, the Predator would
That'd be
probably
awesome.
still win. I mean,
Well, I'm
I
talking
think so, but it would
I'm
be
talking
awesome.
I'm talking like just physical combat, no guns or anything.
Mhm.
That
the
would be
Predator is
something.
really strong.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I don't
And he's
think
7 feet
I don't
tall.
think any human could actually like beat the Predator like one-on-one physically.
Yeah.
It'd have
I
to
don't know.
outwit him.
Bane, I think Bane would have a shot.
Bane could
Just
outwit
because-
him.
Yeah, Bane. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, if Arnold could do it, Bane could do it.
Right.
Yeah. Shoot,
Well, I
Bane
mean,
roided up on that stuff. Might even be able to do some damage.
Well, and Arnold took him out with a log on the rope there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, Bane could probably give him like a rabbit punch to the neck or something.
Then, of course, if you added the Hulk to it, the Hulk could definitely take on the Predator.
Oh yeah, that's well.
Well, now
That
we're just
would,
getting crazy off topic.
that wouldn't be fair to the Predator. So I'd have to disqualify him from that.
Unless it was Hulk Hogan.
Oh, there you go. Okay, Hulk Hogan versus the Predator. Now we got something.
mean,
Down there
Hulk
starts
Hogan-
shaking his
I mean,
skillet.
Hulk Hogan did stitch on Jesse Ventura, so
Actually,
Yeah.
though I will say
True.
that Hulk Hogan was a part of that road
totally.
force mentality. He
Yeah.
just ended up being the goofy part of that mentality.
Yeah.
As-
Murder in
as-
paradise.
Not as goofy as the Ultimate Warrior though. Hulk Hogan was still coherent.
I think the Ultimate Warrior was known as the Dingo Warrior at first.
Yeah.
Ultimate Warrior makes Miss South Carolina look like a genius.
anyway, we should probably get back. We should probably get back.
Yeah, we should.
Um,
Right.
Okay, so we start off with an alien spacecraft being deployed to Earth, and meanwhile on Earth, Major Dutch Schaefer and his team are recruited to rescue a foreign cabinet minister and his aide from insurgents. With CIA agent Dylan accompanying them on this mission.
Yeah, it's like a Contra type deal.
Yeah,
Yep.
which
Mhm.
the time
Yeah.
period is definitely appropriate for that sort of operation. Although I do love that even in that early scene that he's sort of like a cabinet minister. You know, it comes across as so kind of obviously
Unusual.
and obviously kind of hackneyed, which as we later find out it is. But yeah, again, you could there's enough in this movie that if you wanted to do like an essay about like the socio-political climate in Predator, you probably could have enough material because there was enough real, dodgy stuff. Like I'm thinking Iran Contra and stuff like that. There was enough dodgy stuff going on in the Middle East and in Central and South America at that time to where it's actually pretty appropriate.
Yep. And and then so they're sent to a drop off spot. I think, and we did already talk about the helicopter ride there. En route to the insurgents' base, they find a wreckage of a helicopter with 3 skinned corpses. But one of them being one of the men being Jim Hopper.
Like they find dog tags, and Arnold's character actually recognizes these guys by name.
If this were the late 70s and early 80s, and if it was an Italian movie, then the answer would have instantly been Amazon Cannibals.
Amazon Cannibals versus Predator.
Oh, there you go. Now that's a movie right there.
And the Predator would probably kill some real animals.
Yeah, probably would.
Yeah, and when they get there, those 2 bodies that they find hanging, when I first saw them, they looked real, but then the second time around, it was like, yeah, those are fake.
I think they look
pretty about that part in general. Because that was pretty. I thought was pretty gnarly. They're being hung like beef carcass.
Yeah. Which, and I like the again, not to jump too far ahead, but it does tie in later on when you see the Predator with his collection of skulls and bones and stuff like that. It's like he's clearly got what he values as his prizes. So it's like he's got, again, kind of like real hunters in the real world. They've got like the deer hunters, they get the heads and mount them on the walls. You've got like people who collect antlers or who skin the animals so that they can get the pelts, or they stuff them for display purposes. There's all kind of varieties, and you see some of those varieties here with the humans.
Mostly skulls, though. Like in Predator 2, for example, you get to see a whole trophy wall, and if you look closely, there's actually an alien skull on the wall.
Yeah.
I liked actually how in Batman, I think the Batman versus Predator 2 was where you had the Predator that actually was hunting even predators, and he had predator skulls, which was pretty cool.
Yep. And I remember I remember him taking in that comic he took a guy's head off and put it into.
He killed a boxer and took the boxer's hands.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and again, there is some interesting commentary that one can have about, is it really hunting when you've got a very clear advantage, for humans against animals and predators versus humans. There's not even a comparison, and that's part of it.
There are times in the comics where certain legit badass predators make themselves not have as much of an advantage. Like I think the one he just specifically ditches his gun and only uses a spear. So it's I guess it's case by case with the predators. Like if they want it to be more sport, they might, put themselves purposely.
It's like an honor culture kind of thing. Like older predators will prefer like spears, whereas younger predators will use their guns more.
Yeah, well, I did kind of get something of like a modern hunter, but also a little bit of almost like a Spartan vibe from Predator, because again, Spartans in their day, not only very warlike, but they also, placed a lot of emphasis on, that self-sufficiency and being able to outlast a lot of different harsh situations. And obviously they didn't have the advantage of firearms or anything, so if they were to kill an animal, a ferocious animal, then it was a real achievement.
Yeah, it'd be like you have to fight a wolf with like a shard of glass or something.
Yeah, yeah. Now you talk about something worth putting up on your wall. You don't have a gun or the obvious advantage, and you still win. Okay, that's a real achievement right there.
Well, yeah, and it's a story worth telling. I just imagine a bunch of predators sitting around with monocles and smoking pipes with big handlebar mustaches.
I say, we were on the outer systems and we encountered a whole swarm of creatures.
Well, the
spinning a globe. There's always like the guy that spins a globe in those scenes and points it
out. Well, the common thing, at least from the Alien versus Predator comics, will be like if you beat an alien in like hand-to-hand combat, like they break off a finger and like burn the pattern like onto their forehead.
Isn't that something?
All right, so after they cut,
that actually comes into play in a plot. Like a human survives like the whole ordeal in one of the stories, and when predators come back, like she was given like a dying gift by one of the other predators. Like she was given like the scar, and the other predators like see that and like let her hunt with them.
And she has like the armor made of the xenomorph skull and shit. I think they redid it in one of the AVP movies, didn't they?
And she's got the alien queen's head as a trophy.
Yes, that one. Yeah.
But again, though there is something about this movie that does make it different from all the Predator lore that comes after, is not knowing anything about this monster that's here.
It has no explanation or backstory in this one.
Well,
exactly. And I think that adds what fear that you can get from here.
And it's also studying the humans.
Right.
It's clearly a more intelligent alien because it is observing the others and those who are in its area. So to me,
before it starts hunting them, like it follows them for a while.
Yeah, there's a really great.
It likes to watch.
It's a
pervy predator.
Well, then you'll find their weaknesses and then circle around and kill them one by one.
Well, and you talk about the fact that the aliens and the predators are so heavily intertwined these days. There's such a great contrast between the xenomorphs and predators in terms of like the predators clearly are, they're much more explicitly humanoid in their personalities or strategies. They have
more animalistic.
Yeah, the predators, they have clothes, they have weapons, they've got, things, they do behaviors that we humans do and that kind of stuff. The xenomorphs are more animalistic and they have life cycles that are not remotely human. They're more kind of like insect-like or amphibian-like because they metamorphosize and that kind of stuff. Which I just think is really interesting. It does definitely set them up as two very distinct species.
And I do find it kind of fascinating that supposedly that was largely born out of necessity, because we kind of touched a little bit earlier about how the first suits just weren't working, and how they had Yeah, they hired Jean-Claude Van Damme to be the Predator, and he just did not work. It was like an abject failure. So it was like, so Schwarzenegger reached out to his bud Stan Winston, and he's like, "Hey, can you do something on the fly?" And and I was reading some comments where Winston's like, sometimes they say the last thing you want is a man in a suit, but it's like, there are instances where you can get away with it and make it work, and this was one of those. One of those
Man in the
instances.
suit was the most appropriate thing for this creature.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, especially given that the Predator is, well, it's a biped. It has a very kind of human-like skeletal structure, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, it makes total sense as to why you'd want to do that. And
I mean, we'll have.
The Predator's kind of the so the Predator's on one end of the spectrum, and then you move to the other end, you get closer to like the Xenomorph somewhere in the middle, and then on the far end you get something like the Thing, which doesn't really have a definite form per se, or at least not one that we can fully comprehend.
Yeah. Time will tell, though, if this particular character is going to be as lasting in the public consciousness as Psycho 8.
Psycho 8 is a much. I think Psycho 8 could actually take Predator in that one-on-one fight.
Well, no,
we love you.
Well, we're totally missing the boat on this one. We know that the Predator wouldn't stand a chance against the Velocipaster.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I mentioned that. I was hoping. Oh man,
that needs to happen.
As soon as you get the Velocipaster on your team, movie's over. Nothing can go up against the Velocipaster.
I'm sure Dustin would be surprised if the Velocipaster showed up on Dead by Daylight.
Oh, that'd be great.
I kind of hope not.
Like, you get the one talking about being a sexual tyrannosaurus to be like, so what? I'm the Velocipaster.
Yeah, people have said, put the alien in Dead by Daylight, and I actually don't want the alien in there because I don't think the alien would really fit very well because the alien is just too deadly for what the game is about. Like, it would make no sense that, people would be able to outrun this creature, you know what I mean?
Yeah, certain things just wouldn't work, but no, I think put the Velocipaster there, put him in Mortal Kombat or as a DLC character or something like that, or better yet, do what they used to do with like Pokemon tournaments, where it's like you win the whole tournament and then you get the character as a special download or something that's tournament exclusive.
What I was thinking about the most deadly game, of course, is the film I watched more recently, John Leguizamo's The Pest, which was also modeled after game. And also a true piece of art.
Indeed.
Honestly, the one I saw recently that kind of floated through my mind, in a sense, with this one was The Hunt. That one, which I know was inspired by The Most Dangerous Game.
Hard Target with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Right. Which I don't think I've seen that one either. Need to. But one cool thing about this one is that the Predator is not the only one learning. You've actually Arnold, Dutch, is actually paying attention himself and learning quite a bit. And
the Predator has rules, and Arnold figures out the rules as the movie progresses.
Well, the Predator seems to have, I guess, some sort of a filter that lets him see weaponry, and or at least that's the impression I get. And there's the part where was it Anna? I think her name is.
Yeah.
Goes to grab a gun, and Arnold swats it away from her. He's like, "No, don't." He's like, it's leaving you alone because you're not armed. It's like, so that was.
I have to say, again, people don't really talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger as an actor all that much. They always talk about Arnold, the action star, Arnold, the Governator, all that stuff. They talk about some of his more humorous moments, etc. Not a lot of people talk.
He was a relatively competent governor, which is surprising.
Yeah. Well, that's what I understand. I mean, he won the recall vote, and then he won like 2 actual terms. So I mean, he has to have been doing something right. But the thing, not a lot of people really talk about Schwarzenegger, the actor, like in terms of his actual acting skill. And I think if you gave him the right role, I think he can really do a great job. Like,
he is.
Well, he's really great at certain types of things,
Mhm.
and I think he's really great in the Terminator movies, and I think he's really good in this, because again, his best aspects get to shine because he's a good commander of people. Which again, I imagine it's some of the same characteristics that would make for a good governor. He's a good commander of people. He's got the right blend of being a good tactician and caring enough about his his men to want to see them live mission to mission, but he's also he keeps his eye on the mission ultimately. He calls Carl Weathers on his bullshit. And he is able to think his way through the problem and that kind of stuff. And it's like, and Arnold is able to communicate that it's not just a simple matter of he just happened to be the biggest guy in the movie industry at the time, even though that technically, he was a physical presence, obviously. But I think that not a lot of people talk about what he brings to the right kind of roles. Like this movie shows him at his best, I think, in terms of just what he's able to bring to a character.
Well, he does a good job of looking scared as shit later when he's like finally facing down with the Predator.
Oh yeah,
I've always thought that he has some good like facial expressions during that whole final battle. That
well, the whole third act is mostly silent, which I really like. It's
when he gets
mostly
caught
through
between the wrist blades. He's like,
Yeah.
no.
Well,
Apparently,
it's mostly. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, in fairness, much of the expressions of terror and strain and stress that Arnold and much of the rest of the cast apparently were due in no small part to traveler's diarrhea and other.
Oh yeah, when you're in the jungle, so I mean you're probably roasting your ass off.
Right, well that too.
But and especially in that third act, so he's covered in mud,
Right.
and sticks, and all kinds of shit.
Actually,
It's not pleasant.
in the commentary for Total Recall, they were talking about how Arnold brought his own chef with him, and everybody except him got food poisoning.
Right.
Yeah,
And the one time he did get food poisoning was when he ate with everybody else and
Right.
used the chef.
That's
I think I read that it was like him and the director John McTiernan. I think managed to escape the worst of it, but everyone else.
Probably a lesson learned from Predator.
I was gonna say, like, that's you talk about pampered stars and some of the weird things they request. I think a personal chef, probably a worthwhile investment, especially when you're outside the U.S. I'm just
if
saying.
you're shooting on location.
Yeah, really.
Keep in mind also that somebody like Arnold, actually shoot any of these people, really, you have to have a special diet to keep up.
Yes.
I mean, we talk about The Rock and stuff like that. Now, I admit, Arnold got some help by,
You
with
need like
steroids.
5,000 calories a day.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, and of course, doing it without steroids is even harder than doing it with. Which Arnold did have that help, but still, it's a amazing thing to see what you can do and what you have to do. I mean, look at the diets and exercise plans of a lot of our muscle men today and a lot of these superhero movies. They have to do impossible feats. In some cases, they have to get themselves unhealthy in order to look like these super muscular powerhouses because they have to dehydrate themselves.
Yeah.
It's just totally unrealistic standards for these. But
well, and I mean, for those guys who are not like professional bodybuilders, just as a profession, or as a lifestyle rather. Yeah, because you always hear those stories.
I've used Joe Manganiello's bodybuilding routine. Like, he's friends with Arnold, and it is very difficult and very demanding to like follow something like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well,
for like
that's
6 weeks.
that's what I mean. Is like the people who do that. That is their life, pretty much. I mean, there's a reason
Oh,
why they
yeah.
call it. There's a reason why they call it professional bodybuilder, because it is a
Well, you have
whole
to, yeah.
regime versus like your standard Hollywood actor who will have to spend however many weeks getting into shape. Yeah, and that's meant
Mhm.
for the shooting duration. It's not meant as like a full lifestyle commitment. I mean, we
Mhm.
talk about Arnold, in the shape he was in and all that stuff. I mean, he won Mr. Universe and several times over, and Mr. Olympian.
Olympia.
That's what Pumping Iron is about. Which that's a
Yeah,
great
Pumping on.
that's a
when
great
you
Really is.
when
great
you
documentary.
train like that, that is all you have time for. Like
Exactly.
Mhm.
you will get up, you will go to the gym, you will come back and rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think I read on this one, like they were scheduled to be in the gym at 6 every morning, but that most
Yeah,
of them
something like that.
kept showing up earlier and earlier out of competition,
Yeah.
and they would be
Yeah.
there as early as 4 or whatever, just working out, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
crazy.
I can barely, I'm
Yeah,
not a morning
Like
person
you can't
whatsoever.
like have classes or go to a job or
right,
really have
I know.
anything going on. Like it's
right.
such a big demand on your time and energy.
I know. Well, but that's
Mhm.
why it's a whole industry. Like if that is what you are all about, it is a
Mhm.
whole industry. And I mean, that is what Pumping Iron is about. And that's partially why that was an important documentary, because it did highlight not only how much goes into it, but, just how much of a commitment it is. And, like around that time, that's when Arnold was probably at his biggest, because that was all he was doing at the time. Um, and but yeah, I don't think that he gets as much praise for when he's able
Mhm.
to take all that he is and fuse it together into a really good
Mhm.
performance. I think he does
Mhm.
it here, particularly because he does show a lot of competence, and he does manage to think his way through the problem. Even though he is a very physically strong guy, it's not all
Mhm.
about that, and he's also not invincible either.
Yeah,
Because
and
Mhm.
this is an enemy that he cannot overpower.
nah,
Now, one
he has to outthink him in order to win.
One thing that he does have that has helped him immensely as an actor, and probably helped him immensely as the governor, is that he is a charismatic individual.
Oh yeah, totally.
He is very charismatic, and he does a good job of believe. I think we said this before. No, well, Dane, I know you pointed out like his tactical skills and his leadership skills, but I think also just generally he does a good job of creating a believable leader. Just in terms of he does a good job of showing, yeah, this is someone you'd want to go into battle with,
Oh
and
yeah, totally.
he does a good job with that, definitely.
Well, and good leaders, whether on the battlefield or in a group of people or in government, whatever, they do have that special something. They have the ability to command people and to make you believe that they know what they're talking about and that kind of stuff. Arnold definitely has that on screen and in life, and I suspect that served him very well. Um, but yeah, it is a quality, and I think that it's something that not everybody has. I know that I would like to have more of it than I think I necessarily have at this juncture, but I think it also depends on
I think we've
the
thoroughly
field.
covered Dutch's character. So how about we get to everybody else?
Yes.
Yeah, you think?
Well,
Judge's
Dutch's character
men.
really is the one to cover. The rest are kind of
Yeah.
side characters at the end. I mean,
They
they're
are very
colorful
distinct
cast of
personalities, though.
people.
Like everybody is memorable. Everybody's kind of got something going on.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. Well, I like the fact that the one guy, not Carl Weathers, the other one, who sees the predator, Mac before everybody else. He was in Commando with Arnold as well.
Mhm.
But it's nice to see
Bill
them
Duke.
on. Yeah, I like seeing them on the same side, and
Mhm.
uh, I cannot remember his name, but I've seen him in a couple things. But I've always liked him, and he gets to. I think he's got one of the more clearly defined characters in this, because he sees it before everybody else, and he knows.
Yeah.
He and Anna, they both have an awareness of just how much to fear this thing.
There is one thing that bothers me about the character. One of the characters that just today it's just I guess it wasn't as offensive to back then as it is, like that whole wise Indian.
Billy.
Sonny Lanham.
Billy
Yeah.
was
He also
kinda
had,
stereotypy. That's a good point that I
yeah.
hadn't really thought of.
I noticed.
I don't
that
think it
now,
goes to
too.
the point of being offensive, though.
I didn't
it
realize
does
he
fall into that
died.
trope, but yeah,
It's
it's not
not
like they
really
have him out there sending
overdone,
up smoke
though.
signals or anything. Exactly. I always thought of him as like Torok. Torok, I
Yeah.
felt like had to be kind of modeled after.
It's
Billy.
it's a fine line, isn't it? Because it's a
He
fine
was
line.
he was a porn star. I didn't realize that.
Nice.
Now that's a stereotype that most people can get behind.
It's
Literally.
a fine line with that kind of stuff, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because it's like, with a lot of Native American tribes, tracking was historically a part of it, but when that's all that the characters got, then it makes it kind of, it gets more into like offensive stereotyping. I think that this actor brings a little bit more to it, but I don't think the script, that's more of what he brings to it rather than what the script necessarily gives him. I did notice that trope here.
Yeah.
It
is interesting
there is
that
actually a line about that in one of the Turok comics. Like Turok is meeting like his nephew, and they're like doing something, and the nephew like Turok says something about tracking, and the nephew makes a comment like, "Oh, all of us are good trackers, huh?" And Turok is like, "It's anything else. Some men are good at it, some are not. I'm a good tracker. Your uncle was very bad at it, however."
In both 48 Hours and Predator, Sonny's character is named Billy, and in both films he dies shirtless and brandishing a large knife.
What a way to go.
And now I have to say about his death moment, it seemed a little pointless to me. Like it was just straight up. It was just straight up testosterone fueled bravado that ended up having no effect whatever on the plot. It was like, I don't know.
would have wanted to see an extra. I wanted to see an extra action scene between him and the Predator,
like fighting each
other. Fighting each other.
Yeah,
you could have told.
Yeah,
he had actually gone all out. I think that he could have. He might not have beaten the Predator, but he could definitely have caused it damage.
Right.
He could have wounded it. It would have been a good opportunity to show that it was like versed in hand to hand, and it could have pinned him to a tree with his big knife.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
That person's death is meant to make you cry manly tears.
yes. I like manly tears,
Which, but although in all seriousness, one of my, speaking of wounding it and everything, there are a lot of famous lines in this that are kind of humorous for one reason or another. The line that I think really, again, talk about economical screenwriting, I really love "If it bleeds, we can kill it." Such a simple line, very short, but boy, does it communicate a lot. That's because that's
one of the
how
most memorable lines in movies.
Oh yeah, well, because that's how he thinks, and it shows his thought process, and it's true. Yeah, if it's bleeding, then obviously it's not invincible. So they just have to figure out the weakness.
Right.
Well, that and all the terrible off-color jokes. Oh gosh.
And everyone knows the line, "Get to the chopper."
Yeah,
See, one of the most like savage lines in the movie is from Bill Duke, and I think it gets glossed because he's so soft-spoken in that creepy way through the whole thing. But I love that part where Carl Weathers is like being loud, and he's like, "You're ghosting us. Be quiet. I don't care who you are in the world. I'll bleed you real slow. Leave you here."
Yeah.
Like, that part always sticks
That's
with
a
me.
great line.
Hmm.
Well, it also shows that he's not really taking his shit either, as far as like him being a company
Yeah.
man.
He doesn't give a fuck about that. Like they're in the thick of it, you know. So
Yeah,
if he's gonna give
exactly.
them away, he's just gonna stick them and leave them there, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
But in
I wonder if
again,
he'd have done
that
it with his razor.
It's possible. Definitely possible. But yeah, I really do love that line from Dutch, just because it does communicate so much with so little.
That lady does a
Yep.
good. I always forget her name, but she does a
Anna.
great job of like making the predators seem like it's been out there for like they've dealt with it before.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
almost gives it
Elpidia
like a little bit of a
Carrillo.
mythical thing. Like maybe it's
Yeah.
been hunting expeditions in the jungle in the past, and they just the news hadn't got out about it, you know. So
Yeah.
it's a good, quick way of adding a little bit to the mysterious backstory of the predator without really telling you anything.
Yeah, and it makes sense why the predator. I mean, why hunters go to the jungle or to the savannah or someplace like that, because that's where the animals are. And in this case, there's plenty of animals, but there's also plenty of people. So it makes sense why that would be a fertile hunting ground for the predator to be.
Indeed. He was really good at jumping around in those trees too. Like he had practice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Indeed.
George of the Jungle could have taken some lessons from him.
That would have been a
That'd have
different
been a good
movie.
crossover. Yeah.
I mean, Disney owns both of them now, so
That's true. It
It's
could
possible.
happen.
And Brendan Fraser is having a comeback right now.
Yeah, I know.
There you go. Mummy versus Predator.
Oh, there you go.
Dude, have
Yeah.
both of them in there. George and the dude from the Mummy. Like, and Brendan Fraser just plays both of them, you know? Be
Oh,
awesome.
and you could have that. Actually, you
And-
could have the
and
Scorpion
so get
King
the
played by the
Very-
Rock.
Yep. Yep. You could do
Oh
that.
my goodness.
You'd have to make sure to have Rachel Weisz, though. Can't do the Mummy without her.
as we saw with that last one,
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, I didn't actually see it, but I did not hear flattering things.
Yeah, I didn't either. But yeah, I mean the whole climax of this film, it's fantastic because it's almost entirely silent, except for like a few exclamations from Arnold here and there.
Mhm.
But to me, like that's the movie.
Exposition.
Yeah, well, not exposition, more exclamations of
Yeah.
"You one ugly motherfucker," and stuff like that.
Well, like I think he makes a comment that it can't see him when he's covered in mud or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it makes sense because it's to hide his heat signature.
Yeah.
But I just love the fact that to me kind of, whenever I think of the Predator, I always think of that because it's like, yeah, that's the movie at its core, you know.
No,
Just-
And
Yeah,
yes,
pretty much.
it is one ugly mother.
Oh, really?
I used to say we did make kind of a big jump from when they first go on the mission to to the final fight, the final showdown.
Yeah.
Dutch and his men they ambush this bait. They ambush this this guerrilla camp, and kill the they kill the guerrillas and some Soviet and and
Yeah, they
turns
blow
out
the
that-
shit out of those dudes.
Yeah,
Awesome.
what did we think of this moment?
It's amazing,
yeah.
dude. It's one of those scenes where it's like it goes on a solid few minutes longer than you think it's going to, even though you've seen it. It's just like, God damn, they're unloading on these fools right here. And then I think we
Yeah.
get that scorpion scene not too long after that, where he like
Yes,
gets that
right at the
scorpion or
end.
whatever off the dude. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's a
It's
great
just
scene.
that's the portion of it that delivers your man-on-man action and explosions and all the cool shit that you want from that movie.
Right.
Even before the actual threat is introduced, you know.
You know,
Well,
now that
they
you
gotta
mention
show
that,
you-
what is that?
They got to show you how badass they are.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it's a good setup to when this Predator starts picking them off like they're nothing. If it was just a regular guys walking around in the woods, it wouldn't be as impressive. But you've got these badass roid ragers that have been the Roid Rangers. There you go. That have been taken out
Dude.
like they're nothing. That's
Well,
impressive.
what I said before about if there were no supernatural elements in this thing, would you still want to watch a movie about these people? The first third of the movie, culminating with that attack on the gorilla compound. It's like if the whole movie was just a series of those kinds of battles, it would still be a great movie because that whole scene is extremely well shot, really well paced. The action's really thrilling. And again, he's thinking his way through the problem. There's like, what is he doing? And he rigs the car to explode and to create the diversion to give them the advantage.
Oh, that's such a manly scene too, where he picks up the back end of it. Just oh my god!
Yeah,
Let's go.
totally. But again, it's
Y'all,
like
they could have easily done this without the Predator and just had him fight like some, Cuban assassin dude or something out there that wants revenge against Arnie's character. Had a few more scenes like this one and just called it. They could call it Moist Fury or something like that. It is really moist.
Okay, I don't know that. I don't know that the marketing on that one would have been as easy as it was.
It would have been awesome. Might not have flown at the time, but moist funny looking back on it.
Though, I was just thinking, like, honestly, I have very little memory of that particular sequence. A lot of the film kind of did run together on first viewing, but the way you're describing it, I'm thinking that scene was probably, this movie was probably directly referenced in the attack on the guerrilla camp in the Suicide Squad. And
it's totally
I'm also seeing a lot of I had always assumed the Rambo sequels, but I could probably say this film as well. One movie I did grow up with was Hot Shots Part Deux, and that definitely goes into some.
Well, I would have said with this movie. Well, I would have said with this movie and with the Suicide Squad, they all take after the Dirty Dozen and Where Eagles Dare and that kind of stuff.
I think Arnold went on record saying he wanted to do something like the Dirty Dozen or the Magnificent Seven or something like that. And
yeah,
I think he kind of got his wish with this one.
Right, and that's what
Are we
I
talking
mean, like
about
that,
the attack on the camp scene yet?
Yeah, well, that whole sequence I think is exceptionally well shot, and it's like the whole movie could have just been that kind of like jungle combat, and it would have been just as good. But it just so happens that an alien crash lands in on this Arnold movie, and that's what's kind of interesting about it. Well, and that's what's kind of interesting about it because up until like past that first third, there's very little indication that there's gonna be an alien in the movie. I mean, there is in the very beginning with the ship, but like other than that, it's like you could have easily cut that out, and it's like you wouldn't have really missed very much because a human could have skinned those people, or like Amazon cannibals or something like that,
or the chupacabra,
or a cult. Who knows what. So it's like, but the movie still could have worked.
Sucking goats out there.
Yeah, but we got. I think if you wanted to call your movie Moist Whatever, then you'd have to have some goat sucking.
Yeah, you gotta.
But I think
anyway,
I think it works really well, and it's got two of the classic like Arnold one-liners, stick around and knock knock.
It has to be a sizable portion of the budget that went on that camp assault too. I would say.
Sure.
What I like most about that scene is it kind of shows off like what each of them is like a specialist in.
Yeah.
Like
in
terms of it's like, oh, this guy is an expert with the minigun. It's like, oh, this guy uses the grenade launcher. It's very straightforward, I guess. Like almost kind of like a video game. Like it's like there are different classes in a shooter.
Oh yeah.
Just like in Broforce.
Well, I imagine that a lot of video games
Broforce.
We're probably inspired by this scene in some way.
They would have to be.
Oh yeah, I mean, isn't it Contra that has like basically Stallone and Arnie on the cover? You know,
Yeah.
Well, and it's got
posters
the
right
aliens
here,
from
and you can
Aliens,
tell that
yeah.
it's supposed to be exactly. You know,
Dutch. Yeah, he's supposed to be Dutch. It's supposed to be Dutch and Rambo.
Yeah.
The Rambo
With
and the
Terminators and
aliens.
Xenomorphs.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all a big 80s action melting pot.
Now, when did Contra come out?
87.
I think
Okay,
87,
there was.
yeah.
I can't remember which one. There was a Contra that I played a lot as a kid, and that,
There
some
was one
fond
with Super
memories.
There was Super I think there was at least one more. I think for the NES, and then there was Super Contra.
Yeah, it probably was
on
that
the
one.
NES, we got
yeah.
Contra, Super C, and then Contra Force, and then we got Contra 3, the Alien Wars for Super Nintendo. And that game is fucking hard.
Right.
Oh, it's so hard. Just, I have like non-flashbacks when I think about the one time I beat that.
Oh, I think we broke Mo's brain on that one. All right, so they blow up the camp. They capture this and the surviving gorilla, and so they go back to the
Man,
they go.
I ain't got time to bleed. That deserves to be mentioned.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Son of a bitch is dug in like an Alabama tick.
Yeah. And I do love the foreshadowing of the fact that, like we mentioned, Arnold won the recall election and he got the 2 long terms as governor. Jesse Ventura was kind of the long shot candidate and won the Minnesota governorship. It lasted 1 term.
Dug in like an Alabama tick.
Yeah, and he doesn't.
The shame Jesse Ventura is kind of a crank nowadays.
Yeah, he is. But I just find that funny because then in this movie he doesn't last all that long.
I mean, he was the second one to get off when they're making their way back to the extraction point.
Exactly. Yep. So again, it's sort of a little bit more foreshadowing.
And as they're,
I mean, that's kind of what the movie turns into. Oh, good.
Oh no, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, go ahead, Mo.
No, I think you were probably going to say the same thing. Like after this, that just becomes them heading to this point and getting picked off one by one. You know?
One by one.
Yeah.
At one point, they also try to set up traps for the predator.
Yeah.
One of which results in a wild boar getting stabbed, and Blaine's body getting stolen. So they get picked off. They try to set up traps, none of which work.
Carl Weathers loses his arm.
Yes, he loses. Yep. And Matt gets his head blown off.
But he and Dylan try to do one last kind of coordinated thing, and it doesn't go so well.
Yeah.
So Carl Weathers loses his arm here. He loses his hand in Happy Gilmore, and then he's later on in Arrested Development where Buster loses his hand.
Oh, and don't forget he got punched to his death in Rocky IV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
He does not have a good track record.
No, I guess
I don't think he gets maimed or killed in Action Jackson though.
Well, and then he was in some short-lived TV show. I cannot remember what it was called, but he was in a wheelchair. So it's like he loses limbs or his limbs cease to work. It seems that's
or he dies in the ring.
Yeah, that too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he provides the voice for Jax in Mortal Kombat X, and Jax, of course, is missing both arms. He has
and he's a boxer.
He should have played the detachable kid, also known as Armful Rockboy, and those Suicide Squad, because that would have been very appropriate.
Dude, if I ever have Carl Weathers in a movie, I'm just gonna have him get hit and like fly apart like a crash dummy. That'd be fucking pretty great.
I don't think he gets maimed in Close Encounters, does he?
Well, Close Encounters isn't that kind of movie, so I think it turns out okay.
It talks about how many times Sean Bean can die in a movie or a show, but let's give Carl Weathers some credit here. Well, I'm glad we're giving him some credit here.
Or I mean, Brandon might know better than I do if his characters in Star versus the Forces of Evil make it through to the end, or The Mandalorian for that matter. But anyway, so yeah, no, they didn't have Sean Bean to pick off in this one, sadly.
Yeah, they get nailed by the Predator very quickly after the camp assault.
Oh yeah,
it's almost like
they really do.
That's them just being annihilated.
Well, you know what they ought to do? They ought to have Sean Bean play the husband of Hilary Swank, and then they both die really early on. Because they both have a tendency to die in movies.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that from Swank. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, it really I think the part where I kind of my memory blanked out, I guess, for most of that gorilla scene, which is sad. I don't know why, but I remember basically from the scene where Mac and Dylan meet their doom. And yeah, from there on, it's pretty fast. It's like, I think so Poncho was already injured, right?
Yeah, Poncho was injured, but he was the last one.
Yeah. And then Billy does that weird final stand thing.
Yeah. I assume it's meant to be foreshadowing to Arnold.
I guess.
Final stand.
Yeah.
And Mac, as badass as he is, just gets reduced to kind of a babbling mess, and he dies. And it's almost too quick to the point where some of the kills definitely are a little anticlimactic, but you're building towards that, ruckus at the end of the movie there.
Right.
And they do a good job of keeping it. It is really almost a perfectly paced movie. I mean,
yeah, poor Mac just gets plasma blasted, but at least he has the introduction of like the dots, which are like a really iconic Predator thing.
Yeah,
well, that and the because it's a laser, then of course the wounds kind of cauterize themselves as they make their impact. So it's not like there's definitely some blood, but it's not quite as bloody as it might have been if it was a more conventional projectile.
Well, at least they wouldn't bleed to death.
All right, and so after he kills, once Poncho's killed, Dutch realizes it's not going to kill anything it's not going to kill anybody that's not armed. And tries to keep Anna, keeping Anna from getting killed. He sends her to go run for the chopper, while he goes and lures the Predator off a cliff and into a.
I don't think him falling off the cliff was like intentional.
No, not intentional. He's running against the Predator and ends up sliding off a cliff. Into a lake, like not a lake,
a river,
or to a river.
Yeah.
And
that's when he preps for the climax there, and he lets out that really cavemanish roar there.
Yeah.
Well, the river scene is important because he gets covered in mud, and that's when he figures out like that the mud like masks him from the Predator.
And this is also when the Predator, the Predator loses his cloaking ability. It affects his cloaking ability.
It shorts it out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't think
high
the Predator
quality mud too, man. I mean, I don't know if that was like naturally there, or they specifically brought it in because it would spread on them nice. I've never looked into it.
Of course, I always got to wonder about the mud, because the mud wouldn't have totally blocked out his heat signature, so it's kind of interesting how it worked. But then again, I'm trying to poke holes into a movie about an alien hunter.
Yeah. Well,
taking on a crack commando team.
Mud is supposed to Mud
Yeah.
is supposed to hide your body heat.
That's what I understand. Well,
It's like a mask.
So you want to? I mean, yeah. I mean, people pay for it at the salon, for certain types of treatments. But you want to talk about poking holes? One thing I noticed was I was like, "Gee whiz, this jungle at night is exceptionally well lit." Even,
Yes.
even without some of the fires and stuff here and there, which I know that's kind of their justification. But I was also like, this jungle is abnormally well lit. It's like it should not be this bright in the jungle at
Mhm.
night. It shouldn't.
It's all the napalm that they use. It just it does that naturally.
It's got that. It's
It's
got
the
that
fucking
smell.
glow of the testosterone, man. Just in the air.
Maybe. It smells like
Motherfuckers
victory.
are illuminating like fireflies out there with that shit.
Smells like teen spirit.
Yeah, something like that. But you talk about poking holes. I was like, oh man, that's and it wouldn't be so much if they didn't also put the smoke and stuff in the air to catch the light just right to where you see those shafts of light through the trees and stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's obviously artificially put in there.
Okay, so Dutch and the Predator engage in hand-to-hand combat. After
Dutch, there's a montage where Dutch prepares for the battle,
yeah,
and then
setting up
does that
traps.
challenge roar thing, and then we have that really great unmasking scene too, which takes place right when they start to fight.
And what do we think of
Which
the
we got to talk about that a little bit.
we need to talk about the unmasking scene. What did we? I mean, we find out he's one ugly. The Predator is one ugly motherfucker.
Indeed, he is. Which
Yeah, jokes aside about his mouth, that is a hell of a sick design for an alien. The way it opens like some type of sea creature or something. I just love it, and sort of a bit of a snake vibe to it.
Yeah,
it creeped me out when I first saw it as a child. It was truly frightening.
Well,
Indeed.
He does have a set of mandibles, that are very kind of I'd say very insect-like. And they definitely look like the kinds of mandibles that you don't really want to mess with. They do look like they're meant for different types of feeding than like the xenomorph's teeth, which are more like your standard kind of just spike-like, sharp teeth.
Mm-hmm.
They're more tusks, I think, because
Yeah.
they're referred to as tusks most of the time in Predator stuff.
Yeah, I
There's
can
even
see
a
that.
Predator in the comics called Tusk.
Crack Tusk.
Like the one that
Crack
drove the
Tusk,
friends.
Broken Tusk
Yeah,
are
Crack
really
Tusk. There you
common
go.
Predator names.
Yeah. But it definitely. What makes it work is that it's close enough to our world to where we could believe that a creature might evolve that way.
I just like how he has those thick little black hairs on him too. It's just something about that.
Almost.
Well, those, for sure, the dreadlocks are iconic, but the little hairs around his face,
just like the detail.
Yeah.
Okay.
It reminds me almost of a tick or something. It's.
I can see that. Yeah, that is a nice touch that they gave him more skin texture.
Well, that and you look at real life insects or like flies don't have mandibles in the way that other insects do, but flies have little hairs. They have things like that. So it's you look at nature and it's that's the ultimate inspiration when you're trying to design a creature like that. And again,
you can tell Stan probably just thought of various things that are kind of creepy and made an amalgamation of all of them. And it works, man. Those mandibles.
I know a lot about the design process for the alien, but not for the Predator. So I kind of would like to look into that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like
same, dude.
Seems like it'd be a worthwhile thing to look into, but it is an important distinction again that this is much more of a familiar humanoid-looking creature. Then you get to the xenomorph, which is it's increasingly more foreign in its life cycle and in its design, and then but it's still vaguely humanoid, but not as directly humanoid as this. And then something like The Thing, which is obviously not in the same franchise, but like the whole purpose of The Thing is that it doesn't really have a singular original form that we necessarily get to see all that much. So, and the horror there is more that you can't really comprehend exactly what it is, whereas
More
here you
Lovecraftian.
can, yeah, and
Mhm.
here it's more you can understand pretty well what it is and why it does what it does because it's very similar to a human, really.
Like, it has understandable motivations.
Yeah, and just the way it gets around, the fact that it uses weapons and tools and stuff. Yeah, it just functions like a human does, just on a more terrifyingly powerful scale. But you can
There's
totally
something
understand
beautiful.
why.
Right. There's something beautiful too about how sleek and smooth the mask is and how not sleek and smooth the
Oh,
face
yeah.
underneath it is, you know?
Totally.
Like, because that
Well, I mean-
mask in itself, just this image of it is iconic, you know, with the eye slits, and it's. I don't know what quite.
You get a little bit of an
what-
idea of the culture it came from, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, human beings do that all the time too, where we have either masks or helmets or headgear of some kind that is more smooth and sleek and shiny, and then the faces underneath it. I mean, the average soldier is probably not going to be all that handsome. So it kind of makes sense there. Or you even look at something like Jason, who's always been deformed underneath the hockey mask, which the hockey mask is comparatively much smoother.
True enough. And his whole outfit is pretty well designed too. I don't know if you'd really call it armor. It's more of just general clothes, so that he's not just swinging brain out there. But it's it looks good. I think he's got like a little bit of fishnet.
And then there are armor plates, and then like the netting that projects like the invisibility.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I
it
thought
looked
that was really cool.
It looked to me almost like their culture's equivalent of like either the kind. I guess it kind of like a safari gear or like or even kind of like what Arnold and his men were wearing. Combat fatigue. That's like it's not like a full blown suit of armor because it has to be lightweight enough to get you from A to B in the sweltering heat, so
it's not
like that.
outright military gear, but it's like hunting gear.
Yeah, like safari gear that you would wear if you were doing that sort of thing, or even like
you were hunting big game, yeah.
Yeah, or like even like Roman armor did what it needed to do, but it was also relatively lightweight.
And kind of the expanded universe of Predator, like there are military predators that we do see, and
I do remember that.
You see them more in video games, and they have like head to toe like very heavy armor.
Yeah, they seem
So
like
there is
they
a
would
difference.
need that. Yeah, and they definitely seem like the kind of species that would be good at that kind of combat also.
The kind of the way it's worked in a lot of the stories is kind of like the lighter gear you have, it's kind of relates to your experience. Like the better hunters use less gear.
Yeah.
So this hunter is probably like a advanced intermediate hunter.
Yeah, it's kind of the vibe I got.
Because he travels fairly light and doesn't have a whole lot of gadgets.
Yeah, but
It's
still
maybe not
uses
old,
more...
but he's not by any means a rookie kind of thing.
Yeah, but he uses more gadgets than he necessarily should if he were to get the full street cred.
Well, that's what they're about now.
It often shows like not total novices, like just completely reliant on like their guns.
Yeah.
And ranged weapons.
They got to get back to their roots in order to be really skilled hunters, I should think.
Well, there's kind of an example of that in the first AVP comic, where one of the Youngblood predators does try to like hand-to-hand combat like a bunch of xenomorphs, and he kills like 6 or 7 of them, but he quickly loses the fight because he tries to take on like 20 at once, but he's not experienced enough. And then there's kind of a replay of that later on with one of like the elder predators, and that predator easily defeats all those xenomorphs.
Yeah. You could have easily done like an Alien versus Predator equivalent of like 300 with the Predators as the Spartans, and it probably would work pretty well. In terms of like,
could.
Yeah, in terms of their just overall view of life, you know.
Yeah, I think that the issue with Alien versus Predator is they had to have humans involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, you don't want to really demystify the Predator too much. Like, you don't want to explain everything.
No.
So it's kind of difficult to work with the Predator purely as like the antagonist.
Yeah. But
because they really never did lay it all out, and even in the comics, like there's still that element of mystery to their culture a little bit, and where they really even come from and all that stuff. So, yeah, I agree.
Like, you do see the Predator homeworld in AVP 2, but very briefly.
Yeah, less is more.
Like, very briefly.
And in Predators.
Well, is that Predators, their homeworld, or is that a hunting planet?
That's a hunting planet in Predators.
Yeah, because I think it's in the comic. I think it's home. It's a little different, but that's why I liked Predators, because it kind of in home they have like
it's a game preserved planet.
It's basically like, you know, specifically for hunting. You can just drop people down there and fuck them up, you know, or xenomorphs, or a group of people you infect with xenomorphs to create a bunch of xenomorphs, you know. I don't know, though. I think the final battle plays out pretty much like how you would want it to, you know? It's a good combination of brute strength and ingenuity and all that good stuff.
Yeah, the Predator really beats the hell out of Arnold.
Like, really
Well, but again, I mentioned Conan the Barbarian. Same thing there. Conan has to set up traps to get the best of his opponents, so, you know, it's not just brute strength.
I think that's the idea they're trying to set up in both of those, is that, yeah, you see all this brute strength, but he can also take them out with brains, and sometimes it's not just the brute strength that wins.
Well, I think it really highlights just how much the Predator outclasses just humans in general. Like, because if someone like Arnold just loses that badly in a fist fight to this creature, because I mean, he's getting tossed around like it's.
He really
got one good hit in.
Yeah, he really does get his ass handed to him, and he does have to. That is the only way he could have.
And you can definitely see the size and strength of the creature when he's holding him by his neck, you know, and he's sizing his skull up. Like,
why is it
my
favorite part?
Human.
Before like the real fist fight starts, when the Predator like pins him to the wall and just like examines his skull before he takes like off his gear and does like the challenge thing.
to quote Fear and Loathing Las Vegas, it's all right. He's just admiring the shape of your skull. Quite literally.
Yeah, some nice cheekbones there, sir.
Yeah, which it is. I love that moment too, because again, it's like I am sure he's trying to. He's of two minds. He's of the mind of like, you know, I could snap this guy's neck right now. But he's also looking at him like, you know, this guy
is a perfect trophy.
A perfect trophy, but also this is a worthy adversary finally. You know, so if I were to best him and make it a fair fight, then and I can still beat him, then this would be the ultimate victory. And you, again, no dialogue to communicate that. You just get that look, you know, in his eyes based on what all we've seen him do, and it's like, yeah, you just kind of know that that's what's going through his mind. And plus, just what a good trophy he would make.
So one of the parts that bothers me and disturbs me at the same time is that part Arnold takes him out with the trap, and he decides not to kill him necessarily at that moment. So the Predator activates that self-destruct thing, and then lets out this really chilling laugh. But
a very human laugh.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it is a human laugh.
That's Billy's pitched down.
Billy's laugh.
One of the Predator's abilities is he can copy like the sound. He can copy like speech and voice patterns of prey. Like it was like a feature. It looked like a feature of the helmet, but apparently it's just something that the Predator can naturally do. And so that was Billy's laugh.
There you go. Well, I guess it's a little bit like the parrot, can copy sounds that you wouldn't think it could be that it could copy really accurately.
It's like a hunting lure almost.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like he's using phrases that he's heard like over here to like lure to get people away from the group.
Yeah.
So it's a deliberate thing that serves a purpose.
Yeah, it is pretty chilling, and it does kind of throw you for a loop because you don't expect this thing to sound like that.
But that whole thing threw me off a little bit. But it also creeped me out too. So
it's intelligent enough to understand language.
Yeah, and how to use it to its advantage, or at least sounds.
Well, and that whole like scene of him jumping as the bomb goes off or whatever is like the most sizzle reeled scene of the entire movie. They'd throw it in constantly in those sizzle reels, I feel like, where you just see that one bit of it,
Well, and I like the fact that the actual explosion is not like a standard red fireball. It looks more like an explosion that came from technology that we don't have.
Right. Yeah, man, it's good stuff. I mean, it's that whole last sequence of it. You could just the whole movie is endlessly rewatchable, really. Because it is just so no nonsense and so full of awesome shit and awesome lines and lots of firearms. I guess I was reading right here that minigun that Ventura's firing off fires 6,000 rounds a minute, and he for sure fired off at least that many. And that's not counting all the other dudes. I can't find an actual like exact quote of how many like how many blank rounds were fired in the movie, but it's got to be astronomical.
Right.
Well, if he shoots off that much that quickly, you should probably see a doctor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's and Arnold, of course, finally did get to the chopper, but much later than most people.
Well, hey, that explosion created a landing pad for them. So
it did.
Indeed, it did. But yeah, great stuff. Just very to the point and effective.
Yep, and we close out with a recap of the cast. Taking their bows.
And I do really, really like it in movies when they have the credit of the person next to, like, their correct credit next to their faces, because that way you know who's who. Otherwise, you just have to look it up afterwards like I do.
It is nice, but it also gives me sitcom vibes, so I'm not going to lie. I usually imagine some sitcom music playing over the end of Predator.
Yeah, well, okay, now you talk about music, which I imagine is the next thing, but music in this, I forgot just how good it is. It's really high energy, but it's got that right blend of like kind of trying to maintain suspense, but it also is not above some like almost cheesy like war movie kind of themes and that kind of stuff. So it achieves a good balance of it. It's not really trying to be ambient or abstract or anything. Like, it's much more grounded, and it's more trying to be like a fun action movie, and it's in its scoring that also still has suspense in it.
Indeed.
Yeah, Alan Silvestri made a really good score for this.
Yeah, he did.
Right.
Agreed.
And
He does
I
his job
usually
very well.
and I usually think of his Robert Zemeckis scores whenever I think of Alan
Right.
Silvestri, but
The
this is not.
Future and Roger
Yeah,
Rabbit.
and-
Yeah. When I saw Alan Silvestri, I was like, really?
yeah. Well, I think of like you said, Back to the Future. I think of like
Yeah.
Forrest Gump, Castaway, stuff like that.
I think I read that Back to the Future was very definitely part of how he got this job.
I could see it. I
Yeah.
mean, Back to the
Yeah.
Future is a very
Iconic score.
iconic, but
Yeah.
of a very specific variety because it is very involved. You know, it is not there in the background. In many ways, it's in the foreground. And same with this. You know, it's very. It does help to drive the emotion of the scene, and that's especially critical in the third act when there's not nearly as much dialogue. But that's also when it's doing its job the best. You know, if you probably could have gone in a whole other direction with the score, like it could have possibly been more like Apocalypse Now, you know, and that would have made it a totally different vibe because that was all about synthesizers and, you know, electronic keyboards and intermixed with the Doors and music of the period and that kind of stuff, and it gave like that very melancholic fearful vibe throughout the thing. This is not that at all. This is more like an action movie / almost like a fun war movie kind of score. You know, you could have put the score and put it in something like The Dirty Dozen, and it probably would have worked just fine.
All right, and I guess we should go with discuss. So we kind of got the music there. Special effects, or other.
This is great effects. Like everything holds up like spectacularly. Like I can't find any holes in it.
Well, it's
I don't know.
Well,
I don't
great
know.
effects for
Like,
what it did, what its time was.
I think the creature effects were pretty awesome, and a lot of like most of like the traditional action movie like blowing stuff up and the and the gore effects and whatever. I think most of the I guess what you could call the practical effects and most of that was pretty awesome, and the use of the Predator vision was fairly inspired and original and fun. But a lot of the basic computer type effects, they were pretty basic, and I think some of them did not hold up very well.
Like infrared, I'm guessing.
Like the ship at the beginning.
Well, like
the
what's that?
Invisibility. Whenever you saw the Predator being invisible, that was one of the things that stuck out as this did not age well.
It could use a touch up. That's about the only gripe I have.
It looks fine.
I think it looks fine to. I think it looks fine to me. It was the first time anything had been done in this way with a creature, and to be honest, the audience has to see the creature too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also completely invisible.
Well, and honestly, you know, they were smart with how new the technology was. It's like they didn't try to bite off more than they could chew at that time.
Right.
Like I'm thinking also of like with Toy Story, they made the movie about characters that are plastic, you know, so then their models are more plastic looking anyway. So it's an easier leap for the audience to make. The physics of those characters still hold up. So even though the quality of CGI has improved significantly, you're not put off by the fact that they look very shiny and plastic because they're supposed to be. And then here you've got, you know, a creature that's meant to be camouflaged, and it's not really supposed to be quite all there because that's the impression it wants to give.
And I think that's the thing. The camouflage word is a good way of putting it instead of an invisibility cloak.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to blend in with the environment, and he pretty much did. And I think this was something that was new at the time, and you got to have respect for that.
For sure. I mean, minor gripe with it aside, it does work, and they did do a great job in the scenes where it like glitches out and phases off of them. Like, I still think that looks really good.
Now, that being said, Albert Pyun, on the other hand, took it to another level and ripped off the Predator thing with his Terminator-esque like creatures. So
did what now?
In the Nemesis series, he took the Terminator aspect of the robots and then the Predator aspect of the cloaking and mixed them together and created his own series of films with that.
Oh yeah, there was gangs of Predator clones out there. I think Watchers 3 went full Predator with it too. Yeah, you have Solo, which is basically Terminator in the jungle with Mario Van Peebles. All of them got aped like crazy,
Well, and wasn't it Bruno Mattei's Terminator 2 that ripped off Bruno Mattei's? It was either Alien 2 or his Terminator 2 that ripped off this, but which is confusing given the name. But this movie did spawn a lot of imitators, that's for sure.
I recently got a hold of Cruel Jaws, which was also sold as Jaws 5
That's
somehow.
right.
I still got to get that.
Here too.
Get it soon, because apparently it got pulled from the company that made its website, and they might have finally gotten in legal trouble for it.
Probably because of the name.
So maybe get it while you can.
Yeah, I might have to grab that when my next check comes in.
Yeah, I panic bought it as soon as I heard no longer available on the Severin website, and it's like, oh,
Yeah. Well, it's like the chickens do come home to roost at some point, I guess.
Yep.
Kind of surprised that they lasted as long as they did. It's those Italian knockoff films. It's
I was
like
gonna
how
say
they get
that
away
was
with
there
that
for a
stuff.
while.
Yeah.
That was there for a long time.
Alien 2, Zombie 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because they had that other zombie movie that they were throwing out.
All right, and I guess we should go. Let's go around and do favorites. Dustin, favorite scene, moment, or any other aspect of the movie?
I think it probably would be. It's difficult to pick one favorite because there's so much to love in this movie. I think my favorite is like the attack on like that camp. Just because it's such an insane scene. Like there's a lot to enjoy in that.
Yeah.
Like it is nuts.
It really is. It's kind of unreal.
Yeah, I think you were grabbing something to drink when we first started talking about it, but I mentioned like it does go on fully like a couple minutes at least longer than it would have in any other movie, and that makes it just so much more
very
badass.
Gratuitous, yeah.
Yeah, you almost start laughing like 2/3 of the way through it because it's like, holy shit, they're not done yet.
Like, it's actually like if anybody's seen the Suicide Squad, it's kind of like that camp scene almost.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, it's like I said, I had a feeling that was, with the basically a pissing match there between Bloodsport and what's his name, Peacemaker.
Yeah,
just
something like that.
pretty much.
Well, it should not unlike the piss match in this film, between our two leading gentlemen. Which, I mean, if you talk about, I think my favorite, like, individual moment is the manliest handshake in the world.
Well, if you think about it, this is Harry and the Hendersons versus Arnold Schwarzenegger. So,
son of a bitch.
Or Monster in the Closet.
Yeah. Well, but I think I like that as an individual moment, but as far as, like, Well, it's more like the third act rather than a single scene, but I just love the whole thing where he's making the traps and that whole climax just because, again, it's mostly without dialogue, which I think is really cool.
Okay, and Roger, favorites?
Oh, that's definitely the Arnie tribal yell at the when he holds up the the big sword. Says, "I am here. Come get me." I loved it. They take the thing, they take the torch and throws it down, and then that kind of starts the silent part of the movie. It's pretty cool. I loved it.
Okay, and Mo, favorites?
It's I think we're all in the same camp of that is it's dang hard to choose because there's just so much of it that I love. The sexual tyrannosaur, the handshake. But I'm gonna have to go with Dustin. I think that just amazingly manly, gratuitous friggin' camp attack and especially the part where Arnie lifts that truck off of the blocks or whatever. Like that's just I can't help but crack up when it happens, but it's fucking awesome at the same time. Like let's just throw this in here and have him be a manly man even more, just everything about it is good. And then for some reason I really like the scene with Mac and the Scorpion.
Yeah, that's a good scene. Although
like it's especially coming after so much deadly shit, and then kind of cementing that idea that like, there might be like unnoticed things here that are deadly too, because we are in the jungle.
Yeah, well, and I do kind of find it that's a great scene, but it also does sort of make you feel like maybe there was some more potential there for things to have gone in certain directions that they didn't really have time for, because like there's a good contrast to be made that something so deadly can be so small when they are faced with all these other physically larger threats. And then the fact that they had their rival, well, I guess they do pay it off with the fact that they try to survive the Predator together when they'd had a rivalry through most of the movie and a distrust of each other. So I guess that part pays off. But I guess maybe the Scorpion thing is less about size and more just like visibility, because it is so hard to detect. So I guess it does kind of pay off more than I thought it did.
All right, Dave, favorites?
I would have to say 3 favorites. The guttural scream of Arnold. I would have to say my favorite though is where he's planted on a tree and he's looking around for him, and all of a sudden he hears something behind him, and he just out of the corner of his eye he sees that blur go past him. And that is just fucking great. A great close eye camera ship to me.
Right over him.
Yeah, right over him. And just to know that creature is just crawling right fucking near him and he's not really seeing him. That's the part to me that kind of stuck out to me.
Where the mud works, yeah.
And what was the third one? I forget the third one, but... I had 3 in my mind at the beginning of this.
I wonder if his skin was like nice and smooth after that mud,
Probably. I mean, again, people do pay for that.
He got like a free spa treatment,
Yeah, people do pay for that. So.
And he was in the jungle in the heat, so they probably
sweated quite a bit off.
He's probably sitting there with like the cucumbers on his eyes in between takes.
When Max suddenly pulls Dylan into the bush, and they're like, "I have a vendetta. I have a vendetta too." Yeah, for some reason, I love that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Brandon, favorites.
I like that final battle between Arnold and the Predator, where the Predator's is basically like, "Yeah, I'll take you apart with my bare hands," and Arnold's able to basically outsmart it, even though because when the Predator actually avoids the first trap, but Arnold manages to get him to fall into the other.
Okay, Jake, favorites.
it's hard for me to pick something that really, really, really stands out. The manliest handshake is worth a mention. Just it amuses me. And certain other aspects of the interaction between Dutch and Dylan. But I'm kind of leaning toward that final encounter as well. I honestly, and maybe this was an aspect of how tired I was or whatever, but I was very much thinking of another film that came out in 1987 with the big sort of macho showdown between the two of them, where I was hearing in my mind like I could hear the Predator going, "If I use my left, it's over too quickly," you know. As we and then when Arnold comes out and drops his weapon and the Predator takes all his stuff off, and well, first you got Arnold. Well, you are one ugly. But I also kind of hear like, "You seem a decent fellow. I hate to kill you. You seem a decent fellow. I hate to die." I kind of get that vibe in that scene, and overall, I did like that final confrontation. I probably have to agree with Dave, though, that the part right before that, where the Predator crawls right over him, was like, that was a good kind of stand up and pay attention moment. Yeah.
Okay, and I have to agree with everyone. There's a lot of. It's hard to pin down a single specific scene because there's so many great moments. I would definitely say for me the top one. The top ones would have to probably be. For me, the top when they're ambushing the guerrilla camp. It's just because it's so. I mean, it's probably one of the most excessive moments in 80s action in the history of 80s action. But it's offers such a sharp contrast to how this movie ends, where it's just one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat, primitive hand-to-hand combat between man and monster. Actually, I guess the opening battle scene and the opening attack scene and the final fight would be my favorites, just because of how it's just that see that progress from how it starts to how it ends.
Very well structured.
Yeah, exactly. Very well structured, and that development of from reliance on weapons and technology to intuition. And I think that's it. That's it for me. That's it for me.
Why don't you tell us about yourself, Forrest?
Oh yes, and I'm okay. So let's do outros. I'm Forrest Bennett. I'm an independent film producer based in Long Island, New York. I recently been busy working on various projects. I actually just wrapped up filming on a music video in New York City yesterday as an actor person, and I have various other projects in the pipeline.
All right. What about you, Dane? Okay, good. Oh, you were done, Forrest. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm Dane Kyle, independent filmmaker based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been very busy editing my series Oztober, all about 31 different Oz-related movie and TV reviews. I've gotten the first 10 of them edited and uploaded to my channel in draft form or in unlisted form, and then once I have them all done, I'll make each one public, each day in October, and just see what they do. Hopefully people like them, but I've really enjoyed putting them together, and I hope that everybody sees Oztober, that they get a kick out of it too.
All right. How about you, Jake?
Did you say me?
Yep.
All right, I'm Jake. I live here in Central Virginia. I am the co-host of SeptumSin versus the World, where we, of course, like to talk about physical media in all of its forms, and we do our pickup videos. We did one last night that I guess tonight. I always forget your schedule.
It'll be Wednesday.
Wednesday. Which I'm going to go ahead and do a quick shout out. One of the things I presented, I finally completed a really incredible series from HBO, Boardwalk Empire, that I had 4 seasons, and I've watched those, but I never got around to season 5. But I right before we went on, I found out that one of the co-stars, Michael K. Williams, had just died. And so I wanted to say a shout out to him. He was a great part of that show.
Absolutely.
And talented overall. He'd be missed. We also have, we do our big awards show that we're trying for the first time this year, the Versus Awards. And throw a couple little interesting tidbits out, again, based on some news I've gotten the last couple days. Last fall, I was a small, I'm not rich by any means, but I put a little bit of money into a couple documentaries. And The Curve is actually a nominee for this year's Versus Awards. And Tipping the Pain Scale is finally gotten a festival showing, I believe, in Orlando. So, Roger, you might actually get to go see it. And I don't know how many more showings it'll get, but if it gets enough, it might qualify for next year's Versus Awards. So that's kind of fun, though, to know that something I threw some money into is finally seeing the light of day. So, yeah. And actually, kind of ironically, that is about addiction. So, yeah, it's kind of ties as well to Mr. Williams' news, unfortunately. But anyway, I'll leave it at that for tonight.
How about you, Roger?
Oh, my name is Roger. I run a small Facebook group that specializes in wide scale anime figure and manga collecting. We really like to have a couple more collectors to come on and join us. Also, my main aim is to have the largest anime collection in Florida with the Super Grand Grid Array. And thank you for letting me join your group.
Oh, yes. You need to see it. If anything, join the group to see the impressiveness of the array.
Indeed.
Actually, somebody put up a picture of all the Fate series so far. That's a pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah. That's my boy Eric and Tao Lu. They're the 2 people I got to deal with someone about Fate Stay Night EP.
So how about you, Mo?
I'm Mosley. I run a channel called Drunken Master Studios, where my main aim lately is hosting a series called Full Moon Madness, talking about all the full moon movies that we used to see in the video stores when we were young. And I've got a lot of reviews done over there for that. Lots of, pickup segments. I got a review for H.P. Lovecraft's Lurking Fear coming up here soon, as well as one for Invisible Chronicles of Benjamin Knight. And we're also accepting video submissions for the Full Moon Fan Fest, which is just a collaborative effort to showcase everyone's favorite full moon films and maybe talk about some of the stuff that they want to add to their full moon collections. So if you want to submit a video for that, just shoot it up, put it on YouTube unlisted, send me the link via the Full Moon Madness Facebook page, and we'll get you in there.
Let's see, and Dustin.
I'm a horror collector living here in Milwaukee. I have a channel for showing off pickups and other cool things that I find at the Crypt of Horrors. I also have an Instagram, the Crypt of Horrors, and you can find me on Twitter at DurCryptaxis. I want to shorten it to just Cryptaxis, but some inactive account is hogging Cryptaxis. So I can't do it.
Well, of course, I am SeptumSin, a SeptumSin versus the world, as Jake said. Our main aim is going to be on those movie awards. I'm working to get people to do their presenting, and I'm hoping that most of the people here will take some time to work with me to get some presentations filled. I actually have at least one director who has joined us and even filmed some, and another that looks like he's going to help me film some. So it's going to be some interesting stuff. It's going to be a fun night on the 30th for all of us. But the birthday fun amps up this month because Mo has a birthday week coming up next week with the two Gate movies. So we'll enjoy those gates, open them up, but not too far.
Yeah.
And I'll hand that back over to Dave.
Alrighty.
Mm-hmm.
And my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this journey. It has been a pleasure. I know that some of you have been Predator and some of you have been Prey. But in any case, but I also go under a different page called Delusions of Grandeur, where I go on about my own video pickups and my own video reviews. So check that page out as well. And hopefully y'all have a safe journey through the night wherever you are during the moonlight. And maybe you'll just let out a slow guttural scream. In any case,
one can hope.
Hopefully, see you back here next week. And like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much.
Wow.